There really isn't. I'm learning that.
Yeah.
And then I go to this chiropractor and he's like $110 soaking wet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, have you seen
like,
me? I don't think you're going to be able to help me. And then he's like, lay like this, twist like this. My whole back just like releases. Yeah.
Have you tried the needle one?
Oh, acupuncture?
Acupuncture.
No, but I was at a point where I was willing to do anything.
You should
Right.
try
Yeah.
it.
Really?
Yeah. Acupuncture helps.
Okay. There's something that scares me about
I know,
acupuncture.
right?
And it's not the needles. It's like,
But it is
are they going to hit something and then I'm just like,
specifically, like tweaks your nerves and
Yeah.
makes them grow different around whatever's causing you pain.
that's what it does.
Yeah. Like they move the nerve and just set the needle there and it makes the nerve learn a new pathway. That's
Okay,
why it
that's
works.
fascinating. I didn't know that.
I like it. I've heard good things about acupuncture.
Am I supposed to do this?
I'll just get really close. Really
We're singing into the same mic.
Yeah.
You're the bass player who only sings occasionally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming and being on our podcast and for bringing your friend, Almond. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know we talked about this a little bit when we first, this is really only the second time
Yeah.
we've even interacted, but did you share with Almond what we do on this podcast?
Not at all. No, this was a little impromptu.
Perfect.
I got pulled into another meeting, and then I said, you know what? Why don't you just come with me and let's
Great.
go do this. She is literally my go-to maven for all things business, like crazy things you need to know. She knows them. And so I thought, she's going to say something that's going to blow minds today. I just know it.
Well, that's great. I'm so glad that you did bring her and that you're here. And so, the podcast is about getting as deep as we can in politics, money, religion,
All the hot button points.
all the hot button points.
My favorite.
So let's talk about
Sexual orientation.
You are perfect for this podcast. Whatever. The truth is, Dalton has had a podcast for a long time, had me on it, and we just hit it off and had fun. And he was like, dude, let's have a podcast about nothing. And so that's what this is.
Which is
Yeah.
perfect. That's, I think, what drew me to it, because I have to get up and speak in all sorts of business faculties. And I recently started with Hell Center Theater in Orem, which is
saw that.
awesome. And I get a chance to do a little more creative things now and be involved with some people who are moving and shaping the changing Utah County landscape.
Yeah.
Also cool, but I'm just interested in a lot of other things that aren't related to, the money side of life. And I feel like the more that I actually connect with people around me, I'm realizing that that's, we need more of that human connection. We need less of the LinkedIn, hey, I just got this badge, promotion. Look at me, I am now certified to do this, and more of my back hurts. What the heck is going on?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Back pain sucks. Oh my gosh. I don't know how to fix this.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to have these
So-
conversations. Then you get the best advice.
I was laying in bed and I'm like, Taryn, that's my wife's name. I'm like, Taryn, I feel like I need to lift my knee, but I can't. Can you help me? And she hates that I call it this, but she suffers from a rare disease called revempathy. It's like anytime bad shit happens to me, she's like, now I'm like carpool mom on my own. And I had to, and I'm like, I'm literally at the surgeon getting back surgery.
With a bedpan.
And she was like, yeah, but you're going to get on
It's gonna
great
happen to me
pain
now.
meds. It's going to be fine for you. But I'm going to have to pick you up out of bed for a week. And she's the best. And I clearly over exaggerate it. But anytime that goes down, I'm like, little revempathy peeking through here, hun.
I've never heard that. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, we
I
make
think
crap
that's
up.
essential for a marriage, though.
You have to be able to tease each other.
Yeah, and revempathy is, you have to have that in marriage. Because whatever happens to you happens to your spouse, too.
Oh, yeah. It is fun when it's on the other side and you're giving it back. So I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so outside of work, what sort of things pique your interest? What's like, I don't know, what's going on in your brain? What do you think about when you're not thinking about work?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me right now is just that human connection, and how do you create that in culture? We spend so much time working, which is another reason why Almond is great to have on with me, because my first job, right? And she was my boss. She was pretty young at the time, and just kind of took everything over from her dad. And we had so much fun, and we did great work, and we were efficient, and we, got our stuff done, and that's what made it fun. And then I got stuck in some corporate jobs that were not that way and not designed for people. And so I've kind of been thinking a lot lately of, how would I bottle that, and how would I make that happen again, but in different areas? Or how do you really breed that? And I think that's a big piece for me, because I've also done some work in children's rights law. And as we have all of this workforce coming up, these kids, it's like delayed entry into the workforce. They're afraid to get into it. They have all of these things coming off of COVID and whatever, anxieties and things that we never had with smartphones when I was growing up, right? And they're just kind of fearful entering the workforce. But she deals with all of those people firsthand, and yet has maintained this amazing culture in a place where people can feel like they can be themselves. And
They're awkward teenage. I don't know anything about the world selves.
They don't even know who they are really
They
at that
don't know
point.
anything yet. And they're delayed, 2 years basically without a whole lot of social interaction, and school being very weird. And they talk about how weird school was, and they couldn't go to their friend's house. Their friends couldn't come to their house. They were doing everything online. It was so hard. They couldn't ask questions. And they seem delayed in their maturity and their social skills. So they're very awkward. And a lot of times it's breaking through with humor and making them feel comfortable and talking to them about the weird stuff that they're into, because for the last couple of years, they've spent their entire lives online, and there's a lot of weird stuff on there. And they find themselves in these little weird niches of places of people and things that they enjoy that nobody else knows about except for their little online communities. So I'm asking them all the time, like, what are you into? And they'll spout off something. I'm like, what is that? I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Some small, weird, dark corner of anime somewhere, or some artist that only creates online to a small group of people, and they'll pull it up and show me and get really excited about it. And I jump right on that, and then I'm talking to them about that all the time. And I take enough time each day to like maybe look at some of the things that those artists or that anime is producing, so I have something to talk to them about, and it gets them revved up. And then I can talk to them about talking to other people. And do you see how excited you just got about that thing? That's how you should talk to other people, because that you light up when you talk about that. And it's teaching them the difference between the monotone, flat way of living life versus the excited and passionate. And you can share that with other people. Just light up yourself and then give it out, They don't even know what that is until they start talking about it, and you see them get all excited, and you're like, "That I need to harness that. Put it in a bottle and shake it up and fizz it, and then let it explode out of the top."
Yeah.
So
okay, there's so much I love in that, but it just makes me think. I think a lot of kids are going into the deep, weird corner of whatever, and that's not a bad thing necessarily, right?
Yeah.
It's not like we're saying they're on the black web or anything,
No,
but
they're just trying to find something unique.
Yeah. But I think when you're isolated like that and you're going through it, I've got a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old and an 8-year-old. But so I've seen my kids kind of go through this where they get excited about those things and they light up, but they have a hard time helping someone else light up, or even acknowledging, like, I might not be into the thing that lights you up, but it's still interesting to me because it's interesting to you.
Right.
Like, my oldest daughter is obsessed with Harry Styles. She'll talk
Nonstop.
constantly. But the second someone brings up Taylor Swift, she's like, well, I don't like her. And so we don't have anything in common and we can't talk.
It just shuts down the conversation.
But I see a lot of kids doing that. And so what your example where you're like, I'm going to go learn about those artists or I'm going to dig in deep. And then the fact that you're helping them see how they lit up and that they could do that for someone. I think that's the piece that's missing is like, you have to invest time and effort to help someone else light up. And even if it's not your thing, you could still be interested.
Right.
You could still find common ground somewhere.
I think that's where the whole boomer millennial war is. Boomers don't want to take the time. They just want to poo-poo on it. And millennials don't want to take the time with the boomers to find out what they're interested in. There's like a passing of ships in the night of like, I don't care about what you're interested in. I don't care about what you're interested in. And they don't take the time to like get lit up by each other on those things. And I think that's the piece missing in mentoring, especially younger kids who are they are so awkward. And, it's pointing out to them when they do something right, you have to say it to them. Like they don't know because they're just feeling completely not confident. There's just no confidence in them. They don't know how to talk to people. And when they do talk to people, they're completely lost. And it's saying, you did that perfectly. The way you said that, the way you looked in their face, looked at them when you talked to them, that was awesome. That was perfect. It just takes one time, and then they'll do it every time after that because you're pointing it out. When they do something good, if they do something awkward, it's saying, okay, the way that you did that, did you see how the person responded to you? And it's taking the time to show them, like, you kind of got nothing when you said that. That's how you know. Tweak it, say something different next time and see if you get a different reaction. It's just making suggestions all the time, not necessarily saying you did it wrong, but like, here are 5 other ways you could say that same thing that you'll get a better response on. So try any of those 5 things next time, whatever feels good that time, say it and then see the reaction you get from them next time.
Which is interesting because I was just at an event Nate Randall from Gab, the CEO of Gab, he did on Monday for single parents. And you could see that those single parents, some of them brought their kids and, they're just tired. And I think a lot of parents, one reason I love Gab is that it's a device that's smart enough to give kids what they need, but not the things they don't need. But I see a lot of parents, even married parents, who are just tired and given to the whole, let's give a kid a smartphone at 8. And then that kid is so awkward because they've never had that human connection of reading faces and body language and those interactions. They're just stuck on.
They're in an elevator for 8 seconds and that 8 seconds is on their phone. They can't even stomach to be in a room with someone.
Yeah.
So in the children's rights world, it was like 9 out of the 10 cases that I saw of sexual abuse were happening because of phones. And we even had in Lehigh, there was a big sting operation they did where they were trying to traffic like a group. There was, I think they said 17 girls at Lehigh High that were all being kind of groomed.
Oh my gosh.
And they luckily caught the 11 people that were part of it, from New Mexico to people on site in Utah that were delivering, sending text messages, right? So I feel like we're handing them almost this bomb and then we're like, but be normal and be able to hold a job and be able to talk to people, and without awesome leaders and people who are taking the time to teach younger generations this, I think we'll continue to see kind of that gap of just connection, of that human connection.
Yeah, tell me about I love Nate. We were talking before this. I interviewed Nate on my podcast.
Oh, did you?
So I know
He's so
Nate.
cool.
Tell me about your thoughts about smartphones and kids. You work with children.
So having been in technology for over 20 years, I worked for Symantec for like 10 of those years. And we always put out a cybersecurity report annually, and it included information about all of the scams happening through your phone and all of the predators and people going after children mainly or young adults. And that was, the big thing for me. I was maybe 25 to 35 when I was at Symantec. So at 25, I'm like, I'm never letting my kids have a phone. Look at all of this information.
Yeah, that's my thought right now.
Right? I was like, I can't let my kids have a phone because I know that if I give this to them, it's opening them up to these possibilities of things that I can't control that are life-changing, life-ruining. Like, I can't, that's not worth it.
Well, and I would even say there too, like, even if you, like, I know grown men who can't handle Instagram and TikTok, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I can't imagine giving that. Like, I was talking to
yourself when you were 14.
Yeah, or I mean, I didn't have social media until I was a little bit older than that, but I'm right there. I'm at the cusp of millennial. I am a baby, dude. I'm only 30. But I was talking to a friend the other day and just watching, because I work with the youth in our church.
Oh, yeah.
And I just see everybody's in their phones, and I'm like, and then I hear parents like, oh, they're struggling with anxiety. They're struggling with depression. And then I look around, you just look up and nobody's, and I'm like, no, duh, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I have a lot of empathy for parents, especially single parents who are just like, dude, I'm trying to like put food on the table and keep a roof over your head. So of course, like, I'm not going to fight this battle about a phone. You know what I mean? So I think what they're doing at Gap is really nice.
It's really great because it gives them that opportunity. Now they've done so many product upgrades where it's like they've got the music, they've got
there's a lot of
video opportunities, but the parents have control over which contacts are in their phone.
So
and
nice.
You can, see where your kid's at, and they can't turn it off. My kids, I didn't give them phones till they were 16, and then it was a Gap phone.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they got smartphones, an iPhone, they had that thing hacked in 2 seconds flat. I could no longer see where they were going. They were adding contacts. I thought I had controls on it.
No way. No way.
No, the mind share of all the kids sharing between themselves, like how to do all of the tips and tricks.
Yeah, no, dude, it's a night, like, it's crazy. My daughter is, she'll be 8, and she comes, I see her friends with like iPhones, and my daughter's 7 right now, and I have to, it's crazy that I have to have the conversation like, your friends are going to come home with this, they're going to come to school with this one day, and I'm telling you right now, the answer is no.
Yeah.
Like, she already knows.
Yeah, I said.
It's scary, dude.
They started asking around like 5th, 6th grade, and I said, you'll get a phone when you're 16. You ask me again, you'll get one when you buy it after you're 18.
You buy
so
it yourself,
they
dude.
did pretty good. And yeah, I will say they all have worked for her now. I send them her direction. I'm like, they need additional training.
and I don't think we talked about that. Tell us what you do.
I own a couple of restaurants in Utah County.
Oh, what restaurants?
Sent you a sandwich.
Oh, all right, cool.
Yeah.
They have the best names. Their menu was really the selling point for me. It was like the Satisfier, the Sensuous. Like, you're in Utah County as a teenager, you don't get to hear this kind of language.
Yeah.
That's fair.
You walk in and you order a 10-inch hot Satisfier.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Are we going to Utah County, dude? I was like, let's go. Bro, that's great. Yeah. Dude, that's
I love that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Okay, so you were talking about how you are spending time and investing in these kids, and then you told me that she hires you for your first job. So as you're now an adult and you have children, and how does that change your perception of the way you guys initiated your relationship to the way that you have now? I mean, can you see this come full circle?
Yeah, so I was saying, I kind of sent my kids that direction because I wanted them to have a great first job.
Yeah.
And to have a great experience. And I remember being in high school and kids getting yelled at by managers or getting, frustrated with coworkers, and nobody would take the time to help them understand, here's how you have a conversation about when you're being really mean to your coworker and how you resolve that. Or
I know the one you're talking about.
This isn't a hypothetical, huh?
Here's what you do when you steal your parents' car to get to work on time, and your manager.
Mom's best friend.
Working with kids is fun, huh?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So I think for me, I really wanted them to have that, but I also, what was important for me is for them to have an inclusive workplace, because Utah County can be bubbly and not a ton of diversity. And Almond's done a great job of cultivating a company that allows people to be who they are and invites and includes people. I'll let her talk more about it. But for me, that was important for my kids to work with people who were transgender, who are maybe identifying, an LGBTQ community, who are Republican, Democrat, because kids are talking about that because it's on social media, right?
Yeah.
So all of these topics, like you're saying, the big topics that people usually don't get into, kids are being exposed to it. And how do they know what to trust? Well, if you're around people and you're connecting with them on a personal level, a human level, as a coworker, then you don't listen to the stereotypes that you're getting via phone, right? But yeah, you can talk more about how you've kind of created that.
I am curious. I mean, it sounds like you've been a long ways ahead of the game.
Well, I think
It's a topic that's happening now, but it wasn't happening
right. And
even 10 years ago,
a lot
sadly.
of that comes from my dad. My dad was very much a person. His one rule for business was you treat everyone with respect, dignity and respect. And he's like, that's the only thing you need to ever be successful in business, is treat everyone with dignity and respect. And he's like, if you treat people that way, they treat you the same way back. And I heard that from the time I was a baby. That was my dad's motto. Like, didn't matter how terrible people were to him, he treated them with dignity and respect. And that's kind of what I've tried to do carrying forward, is teaching people, no matter what happens, like, I'm going to treat you with dignity and respect no matter what your background is. And if you mess up and you do something that isn't treating somebody with dignity and respect, with dignity and respect, I'm going to tell you that you did that. So, I try to walk what I'm talking. I don't yell at people. I don't scream at people. I don't belittle people. So when they make a mistake, I'll say, did you ever think about how that would make someone else feel? And that's not okay to make people feel that way here. If you want to do that somewhere else in your life, that's fine. But in this place, in this business, we treat everyone with dignity and respect. And the way you just behaved is not doing that. So here's what you did. Here's what I expect here. So that is not okay. And you need to make sure that that never happens again. And if you feel like you need to do that, or you feel like you need to treat people that way, you need to do it elsewhere, and you just need to be done. So I think Wendy can tell you about the one time I talked to her at 16. She calls it the don't be a bitch talk.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Some 16-year-old
Everyone. I needed it. Oh, I needed it.
I have a question. So when you're working with, I run a scholarship with at my high school where I'm from. I'm from Iowa, and I think it's the navigating that conversation of what you just said is kind of hard, especially when, and not just Gen Z, like anybody. It's really hard to manage other people's emotions.
Right.
So like when you're teaching them how to, maybe they messed up, right? And so you're having a learning opportunity with them. How do you manage that conversation? Like the emotions that come up, maybe walls that start coming up. I can only imagine what happens. I mean, I've only had it a couple times. But.
Yeah, generally I do it just us. I always do it alone, so they're not getting called out in front of everyone else, which only heightens emotions.
Yeah.
So you generally have a conversation a little bit later, and I'll pull them to the side, or I'll pull them completely away so we can have a really good conversation about it. And I'll say, okay, what just happened? And can I use your talk as an example?
Oh, totally.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll interject how I was feeling as you.
Yeah.
We're finally getting to the juicy
This
stuff.
is the good stuff.
This is the
So-
more Povich part of the show.
Wendy had been working for about a year, and I'd hired 2 new kids that
And
were.
I was really good. I was
She
like
was-
efficient. I got my stuff done.
She
I
was
thought I was the
fast.
best employee she had.
She
can
was.
see it.
She was very good, but she's 16, barely 17, maybe in that age range. And I had just hired these 2 young girls that it was their first job. They were green, green as the spring fields, like didn't know anything. And so it takes time, when you're training somebody, especially somebody who's never had a job before, you got to tell them everything. You got to teach them how to sweep a floor, how to properly use a towel. I mean, to how it's wrung out, everything, like the tiniest little things. And it takes time and a lot of energy by the person training them. And I can't remember if I had left you I needed to go run to the other store. And so I had left Wendy for like an hour with the 2 new kids while I had to go run a couple things.
And it was lunchtime. It was busy. We had people coming through. My sandwich times weren't getting through as fast as they needed to be. And I remember we had one girl taking orders. The other girl was making it, and I was checking out. So I was calling all the times. And I'm like, we are falling behind here. And so I just kind of inserted myself and started making the sandwiches because I was not okay with it, and kicked the other girl out. So she was no longer able to learn. And she was on register. And when you make a French dip, you call dip down. So the person on the register can make the sauce. And so I had just kicked
French
her out.
dip, by the way.
Right?
So good.
What's the name of it? Sorry.
The Big Dipper.
All right.
Dipper.
We gotta go to this.
Okay, Karen,
So
Let's go.
that felt important.
I yelled at her, and I was like, dip down in the store. Customers are there. They looked. I was so frustrated that they were not being efficient and we were not getting our times. And
I had just walked in the back
was not
door,
good.
and I heard her tone, and then I heard her like, I don't know why this is so hard for you. This is not that hard. Like, just laid into her. And so, I came in, calmed everything down, got everybody working again. And then at the end of the shift, I pulled Wendy in the back room and I said, Wendy, has there ever been a time that I've ever yelled at you? She was like, no.
because I'm the best employee, right? I don't deserve to be yelled at.
And I said, when you first started working here, do you remember what it was like? And she was like, yeah. And I said, it was hard, right? Like, it took you a while to get good at everything. And she was like, yeah. And I said, you weren't like magically fast at making sandwiches overnight. And like, there were things that it took you some time to get good at, right? And she's like, yeah. And I said, was anyone ever mean to you about it? No. And why do you think that is? And I don't remember what you said, but
I was just shocked that she was taking the time to call me out. And that she cared about her other employees' feelings. It wasn't just efficiency. It wasn't just trying to, hit these numbers or these goals that in my mind were the most important part of the business so that we could be as efficient, get as many sandwiches through. And
You have good intention in your mind.
yeah,
You're like, I'm about.
right.
Yeah,
I am trying to do my best job here.
I am the best employee.
Right? I thought that's what mattered. And she's like,
What a great lesson to learn.
yeah.
So
And I
early.
just said,
people matter.
I said, when you treat people like that, it makes them shut down. I'm like, they don't learn as well when someone's mean to them. When somebody isn't patient with them, they hurry and rush and make more mistakes. And I said, it is not okay to treat anyone with impatience because that hinders learning. And I said, when you're hard on people, it doesn't help. Being patient, being kind, being motivational and pushing is much better than being a bitch.
Yeah.
And I said, you can't be a bitch here. I'm like, the way you just behaved was bitchy. And I said, you cannot be a bitch.
Yeah.
Right.
And her face was like,
I was so shocked, but it's when you feel called out sometimes that's what you remember, right? In life,
Yeah.
when you've screwed up something,
Yeah.
that you remember that. And I changed. And from then on, I realized it's my job to help people be their best. It's not just my job to make sure these numbers are getting met.
So I'm a huge believer in that it's where you work isn't what's important. It's who you work with. And even for my kids now, like last night I was teaching my 14-year-old how to do an interview. He's got an interview today.
fun.
So we're going through it and I'm like,
I
you
wish
need to
every parent would do
also
that.
think about the questions you want to ask, Hendrix. Like, how do you know this is going to be a place that you want to work? He's like, well, it's at an old retirement center and he would serve food. And his sister did that before she became a CNA and a med tech. So he's like, well, I want to be in the medical field and all these things. So I think this place is it. And I'm like, that's great, but you're also going to be working with other people, a manager. Like, make sure that you get a sense of whether or not you could work with that manager and you could learn from them.
Yeah.
And I think this idea that it took me a long time. I was all about where I worked. It was like, I felt so good that I could say, I'm at GoPro when GoPro's blowing up.
Right.
What really matters is who you work with and what they're teaching and how they're coaching and mentoring you.
Right.
And the thing that I love the most about this whole story is that you ask why. And then it sounds like you let them come up with that answer, right? Because I would imagine as soon as she puts the question on you, the inner dialogue and thought process, even before the words come out,
Yeah.
changes your emotion, changes your mood, makes you self-reflect. And I don't think enough people ask why. They're like, this is what you did. This is the problem. This is how I want you to fix it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
But to ask the person, why is this important? Or why did this happen? Or why do you feel this way? I think that's the most important thing you could ask.
Well, and explaining to people, I have LGBTQ people working, I have transgender people working, and the important thing for me as a boss is I have a place where people are spending a good majority of their lives. I want everyone who's spending a good chunk of their life at my business helping me run this place to be comfortable where they are in their skin. And if somebody isn't going to help with that, they're not going to work at my place of business, because this is a place we're all together all day long and we have to interact all day long. And this person is different than you. I'm different than you. We're all different than each other. And we all have to accept those differences. And they really don't matter that much. They don't matter that much because we all want the same thing. We want a safe place to be. We want a fun place to be. We want a successful place to be. We want a comfortable and what's the word? Help me with the word.
Just inclusive. I think when I wanted to send my kids to work there, it was to learn that people matter most. And then, switching into 20 years of tech, it's like I felt like I've been bringing maybe a different version of myself to work, right? That I have to fit in here, or I have to wear gray colors and not have nice nails and all be in man suits. And and I've spent so many years where I was the only woman in the room in meetings with partnerships with really big companies and big brands, and I think that's causing the burnout, because I remember I loved showing up to work. It didn't matter if it was a tough day, if I spilled pickle juice all over me, right? It was okay because the people, like you're saying, and the people you work with matter. People who make other people feel like they matter is a superpower. And I was just at Mixers earlier this week. They're launching some cool things.
Yeah, I love Jess. Jess and her team are amazing.
And Cody are amazing. They had 33 women. They just hired their first 2 dudes. But it was the first place I've ever been that was like designed for women. And they all, you could tell going through and walking through their space, they all show up as they are. And it's okay. And, they have, you can bring a kid to work policy. They have take 1 hour out of your 8-hour work day and go use our company gym. Go, and if you have driving duty, you know, I said I've been working from home for software companies for a while, so I get to take calls while I'm, you know, driving kids around doing the mommy taxi duties. And they're like, just don't try and be on calls. Just go take your kids places you need to go. We trust you. And they said they've gotten so much pushback from their mentors and people who are telling them how to run a business, right? Neither of these ladies have ever gone to business school or college and haven't studied this. They're just trying to design for humans and make people feel like they matter.
Specifically, yeah.
Yes.
I love Jess. Another wonderful woman in business I've had on my show, my other show.
She's awesome.
She's great. Also Vanessa Quigley from Chatbooks, another mom-driven, just totally. And I think that's really cool. Like, I think when you have places to work like that, where people, I mean, and you have moms specifically championing for other moms, because that's what Mixers is, right? Like, they're just a totally. My wife loves Mixers. I think
everyone does.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
their
yeah.
products work.
Their products
which
work.
is number one.
Branding is amazing.
And you can feel the authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what kids need, first jobs need. They need the confidence to be themselves. And if you create a place where they can be themselves and you help build that confidence up to be able to talk to other people as themselves, it's huge. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, it's giving them the skills to talk to anyone. It's difficult when they're so unskilled in talking to people.
One question about that. How do you balance, or do you balance, or does it even matter? Is my question just total bullshit, which is totally cool if it is. Is there a nuance between like being 100% authentically yourself and then also knowing how to like read people and maybe like not mask or like hide something, but like have a conversation, right? Like maybe I don't bust out my anime talk with like someone who doesn't love anime or something like that. You know what I mean? Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yes,
I'm not trying
totally.
to be like super.
Because I don't play video games and I'm not into anime at all. But that's everything to kids. That's everything to them. But I love stories, and so I talk about the story aspects of it, and they'd give me the little details. But it's all about stories for them too. You know, their video games are stories, their animes are stories. So I try and find the similarities in the things that they love with the things I love. And so I'll say, well, what's the story in this anime? Or do they have multiple storylines? And I'll ask a lot of questions. For me, it's all about the questions, and that's where you find the nuances in, you know, what do you love about anime? Well, I love that the stories, you know, they have so many different kinds of characters. And I'm like, oh, tell me about some of the characters. And I like to listen to what they're saying so that I can see what parts of it they love and the stories of it that they love, because that's what I grasp onto. Is for me personally, I'm a story person. So
we'll sit in a taxi like in Hong Kong, Singapore,
We've
Las
traveled
Vegas.
all over.
She sits in the front seat. She pulls up in the front seat and she is chatting with the
You're
driver.
a different breed.
Tell me your story. I
She
wanna hear
wants
your
to know
story.
the story of the driver, what's
my
going
mom.
on.
Yeah, where were we that the old Greek guy like got out of the car,
Oh, he
walked
did.
around, and like proposed to me after he was like, "Stay here and marry me," and I was like, "Oh God."
So did you say yes? Like what happened? Yeah.
But no,
Greece is a
I
great
talk
place.
to everyone because I just love stories, and I think that's, you know, I think the kids learn by watching too,
Yes.
because I talk to everyone. And I never stop talking, but I'm also an introvert. So when I'm not, I sit at home, and I love silence, and I read, and everything is so quiet when I'm home, and I crave silence, and I'm totally exhausted after a day at work. And so I am completely an introvert, but I have learned the nuances, like you asked, of asking questions and pulling people's stories out of them that they light up about. And the kids learn that by watching. And like Wendy's mentioned, like, I don't just stare at my phone in taxis anymore, because I've learned that like watching you just ask people questions about their life, like you get some really interesting answers.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, it's way more fun than staring at a phone to talk to people. And I think the kids learn that watching that at the store, you know, I get comments
Absolutely.
all the time like, you get people to tell you the weirdest things. And I'm like, it's because I've just learned how to ask questions.
Yeah, you'd be surprised if you ask what people will say.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think I love that answer, and I think the way I view it is that's the difference between someone who has a high EQ and doesn't. And you're just overflowing with EQ. You just get it.
Yeah.
You understand people, and I think it's great that you have that and that you're teaching kids and youth, because you're right. They're struggling with that right now.
Really
And I
are
think that
struggling,
they
and
know it.
Yeah, they know
And
that
they don't
there's-
want it like that.
They know there's something they're missing, but nobody will tell them what.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think, like you were saying, Dalton, was there's so many, 40-year-olds glued to their phone. So that's what we're modeling. We're modeling that that's what we do. And that's how we need to be better at modeling better behavior. And that's in my own house. Like I said, I had my pretty strict phone thing, but also when my kids' friends come over, we for a long time had, hey, phones go in this basket. You guys can't all just sit on the couch together looking at your phones. That's not a hangout.
I think it's important that kids get out and they like kick a soccer ball and they go ride a bike. And I mean, I used to get in a lot of trouble just kind of out and about, running through cornfields.
Right.
But you learn a lot about life that way, way more than watching some kid play Xbox on YouTube and you're watching the rerun of it.
Right.
And you learn about yourself. Like
what
you
my
were
kids
saying
do.
before, that introspection, the understanding, like if somebody asks you why and you start having that inner dialogue, we're getting so much thrown at us, exterior of what we're supposed to think, how we're supposed to act. Even youth athletics now, it's you've got to start when you're 5. You play the position you're most primed for at 5, and you listen to what your coach says or you get pulled. You don't have the crossover sports athletes anymore, like the Michael Jordans or the Wayne Gretzky's or, Bo knows. He could do all of them, right? So I think that inner dialogue is not happening as much. They don't get to know who they are. And so then they're not confident talking to people or having those interactions because they don't know their own story.
Well, one of the fun things at work, too, is that they aren't allowed to be on their phones. And so, I have 25 to 30 people working at any given time, and they all get to know each other because they can't interact with their phones. They have to talk to each other. And a lot of times it's fun for me as the boss. I'll be in the back room putting things away, but I can hear what they're talking about out there, and I'll have the transgender 16-year-old talking to the high school football jock. I don't know if that's what they call them anymore, but the 6'5" football player kid, and they're talking about the video game that they like to play and comparing where they're at in the story, and it's cool to hear them talking about what they're passionate about with each other, with these two completely different life plans, life trajectories, but they're connecting. And it's fun when one kid will come in at shift change and they'll stand there and talk to each other for 5 minutes about whatever, their conversation was last time. Oh, did you do that? Or, hey, how did your date go? Or, it's neat to see kids from drastically different places in life interacting and connecting. And it's fun to see that happening because it's kind of forced. They have hours where they can't interact with their phones, and so they're having to talk to each other. And they're doing a good job with it. They are finding those same things again by asking questions. But I noticed that the newer kids, when they first start, are silent, but the ones that have worked for a year are pulling it out.
Yeah.
They're asking them the questions, and I'm like, yes.
Well, I think it's so easy to look and be like, we're not the same age. I'm from America. He's Italian.
Right.
I'm, a boy. He's not a boy. Whatever it is, it's so easy to kind of just think, well, we're not the same, but as soon as you spend a minute,
Oh yeah, we're all
there's so many commonalities and similarities. And I think most people on this planet are just really good, interesting human beings. And
agree.
if you take the time to get to know them, it changes your whole view on life.
Yep.
I think that's one reason why I like being a part of this podcast. We meet just fascinating people, interesting stories. That's why I like to travel, go explore, try something new.
Absolutely. Everyone has an interesting story to tell.
Yeah. They really do. If you just give them a chance, they've got something to give to you, and they're probably in a position that you could give them something too.
Yep.
Yeah. I think I've studied empathy a lot, and what I've learned about empathy, the scariest thing about empathy is that when you start practicing it, because I've always wondered, like, why don't people practice it more? Like, it seems like just a really obvious thing. And this is the answer that I've come up with. And that is that when you start empathizing with someone, it's kind of scary to confront the fact that you're almost exactly the same.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like me and the transgender person or whoever, right? Like we actually have way more in common than we'd like to admit.
Yes.
And that scares people sometimes, right? Like, I don't want to admit that this guy is like almost exact, like we care about the same things.
Yep.
We have the same problems going on. We manifest our stress differently or whatever, right? Or our passions differently, whatever it is. But that's always what I've come to learn is like, it's pretty, because I've seen people just realize, holy crap, we're like actually not that different. And then they start like, what's that? Have you ever read the Arbinger Institute book? What is that? Leadership and Self-Deception. Mm-hmm. Right, where you start justifying things, and you're like, "Wait, it can't." But you're like, "No, like you just saw it, dude. This is this isn't a ghost."
Well, and it takes showing yourself too, and being a little vulnerable. You know, in order to find those similarities, you have to, like, say, Wendy can tell you this. Like, I'm very open about embarrassing things about myself because I think it makes other people comfortable.
Yeah,
like,
I think so.
And I immediately start bringing those things out, like, oh my God, yesterday I did this stupid thing, you guys, and I'll tell them some stupid story I did or some dumb mistake I made so that everybody else feels comfortable talking about something dumb they did and some dumb mistake they made.
And not being afraid to try new things and to fail. Like, my kids still, I try and tell them and do the same thing all the time where I just totally screwed up at work today. Why don't you guys listen to this? And I just want them to feel confident that they can tell me things of when they screw up, because that is when we learn, is when we do something maybe that wasn't our favorite way.
I just, 2 weeks ago, maybe, I spoke at an event that I'd never heard of before, but apparently it's in like the group that hosts these things. They're in like 70 countries. They've got chapters all over the world. There's a brand new chapter in Salt Lake, but it's called Fuck Up Nights.
Nice.
And and they like reached out and asked if maybe I'd be willing to speak, but they wanted to interview me. And so we get on the interview and I'm like, so what, like, is this really what I think it is? They're like, yeah, we want to know what's the biggest fuck up you've had in your career. Tell us that story. what'd you learn from it? What has it propelled you to next? And so I tell them, and they call me back. They're like, "Okay, well, we want you to speak, but you only have 7 minutes. We have 3 people. Each person gets 7 minutes. You have to follow this flow." It was packed. I mean, it was just absolutely packed, and everyone was celebrating these failures. I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have had a failure that big. It led you to this. Like, those were literal conversations we had. But so I love what you say, that like you've got to embrace trying new things. You've got to embrace not being afraid to fail, because I always tell my kids, it's not how you fall, it's how you get up.
Yep.
And you can't be strong unless you're experiencing weakness. You can't be brave unless you're experiencing fear. Yes. So if you can identify that fear is simply the next step to being brave, suddenly it makes it way less scary.
Yep.
And just in life, I think if we can think about the closer to failure I am, the closer I am to learning something new, you probably would try to fail much more often.
And I learned that actually way too late in life because I was always trying to be the perfectionist or look at all this list of everything I've done.
My sandwich times.
Yeah,
I hit those damn sandwich
It's
times.
ingrained, but
She was driven.
Almond's going to be so proud of me for being a bitch right now.
I know.
Sandwich times.
I learned it from a guy at Pluralsight, a sales guy, right? Sales all hands worldwide call, and we're on Zoom. And sure enough, this guy takes his laptop into the restroom. So video's on.
Wait, is his name Hayden Wing?
Pants come down, sits down. At least the audio wasn't on.
Oh.
But video was on, and everyone's slacking him, trying to like get his attention.
You can turn the camera.
Right? We were trying to figure out like who's running this on the back end. Can you turn this one person's camera off? Sure enough, after that experience, the whole office is talking about it.
Yeah.
He just sends out an email and says, "Sorry guys, had really bad tacos for lunch."
Oh my gosh. That guy's a legend.
No explanation, no like
None needed.
right?
I'm
Like,
a human being.
sometimes I screw up. I had bad tacos and camera was on. And because of that, at Pluralsight in our marketing group, we decided to have taco pants moments. So, hey guys, every week we're going to share our taco pants moment. And what did you do? And that, like you said, it packed in the room. Everybody was excited to come to that meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And when you know that you're going to be accepted for failure,
Right.
it makes you willing to swing on much bigger things.
Yep, exactly.
You're like, I can be okay with this. It's not going to be the end of the world.
Yep.
But if
You
you're,
tried.
yeah, I'm a big believer in this idea that if you catch someone doing something wrong, they're going to work their ass off not to get caught again. But if you catch someone doing something right, they're going to work their ass off to get caught.
Exactly.
They're going to, I could see that in you knowing like the story with the sandwiches, like, okay, well, I want to do that. I want Almond to see that that I'm taking in that feedback, right? It's, I'm not comparing you to him. And I do have one office reference, but like Dwight in The Office is such an example of someone who like goes so over the top just to be recognized, right? He wasn't given the ability to fail and have Michael not be a dick, but like if you could do both of those things, I think you're in a really good place.
Yeah, it changed the culture from that day forward in
bet
the
it did.
marketing team of it's okay to fail and let's talk about it and bring your story and what else are you trying? Because that's what it is ultimately. If you're failing, you're trying something new. You're doing something different.
And it might work.
You're pushing boundaries. You're like, it's a growth mindset, and yet we have a
People
really hard
say
time
it,
in
but
this
they
culture.
don't actually want it sometimes. They're afraid.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to die to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this was so much fun. I've enjoyed getting to know you more, Wendy. Almond, it's been great to get to know you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
We
Dave.
appreciate you guys came and chatted with us for a bit.
Yeah, it's been great. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Anything that you want to leave with that you're really excited about that you're doing? I know we didn't even really talk. I know that just like a handful of days ago, you held a really women's empowerment event. I mean, you're doing great things we didn't even talk about.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of cool things. I'm really excited in Utah about the Hale Center Theater moving to the roof. Really working on now building out these 2 stages, amazing $60 million property that's going to just be immaculate. And the best part is their team, the owners, the founders who are related to Ruth and Nathan Hale, who created, these Hale Centers originally. They want to keep it intimate. They want to keep the costs down. They want to make it so that everyone can experience the emotion at the theater. And being part of that has been a great opportunity to see how many wonderful leaders there are around Utah that support that connection. Like I said, Gab, Mixers, some of these other companies that are doing a great job to focus on single parents with Gab or to focus on working mothers with Mixers, right? I love seeing that in the community and the support that's coming from there. So that's kind of my fun passion project right now.
I'm excited about that. That's really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're fairly new to that, right?
Yeah. So I just took this on in January to really try and help get corporate sponsors and people to, we're calling it raise the roof.
And it's
going to be, I think, something that really helps bring these new generations into theater, which gives them an opportunity to connect real time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first theater production I brought my kids to. They're like, "Mom, this is almost like TV."
You're like, almost.
And I was like, clearly we need to do this more often.
Yeah.
But we're seeing the youth program just expand and grow because it's a big going concern for parents wanting to get their youth into something where they're connecting with people, they're sharing emotion and having an outlet. So I think it's going to do a lot of good in the community.
Well, I'm excited to follow along and see that progress.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you guys
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank